Hi, Filmatics. Welcome back to part two with Barry Cook, animation director known for director of Mulan and amazing other Disney shows like Tron, doing special effects for Beauty and the Beast, Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and so many more. We'll find out what other films he produced, directed, and let's welcome Barry Cook back to the show. Welcome, Barry.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, we were having so much fun on the part one with you talking about how you grew up in Tennessee, moved to Florida. Your dad was a fine art painter, and how you got your internship at Hanna-Barbera and then got this amazing gig at Disney, which ended up where you got to direct Mulan. That is an amazing journey to getting into the business.
Well, thanks. And a lot of people always ask, how do I get into the film industry, or how do I get into animation, or how do I? And nobody, I don't know of anyone I've talked to whose path has been the same. I mean, Disney recruited heavily from certain colleges like Cal Arts, and which Walt Disney originally founded that school, Cal Arts in California, and other schools like Ringling School of Art here in Florida, and Sarasota, and Columbus College of Art and Design in Columbus, Ohio, RISD, which in Rhode Island, Savannah College of Art and Design, some of the top, art schools in the United States. Maybe a lot of people have gotten into the film industry through those schools, but my path was very indirect and very unorthodox, and it was just a strange thing, because I did not have a college degree coming into Disney, and yet I ended up directing one of their features. So that was very, very strange.
Yeah. So what happens after you direct a feature at Disney? Do they let you direct others, or is it just like you always are trying to get the next gig, or how does it kind of flow?
Well, I began developing some ideas for another feature, and then I got really deep into a feature film I was developing. But then, as we were in the middle of developing it, 9/11 happened in 2001, and I don't know if you recall the business climate at the time, but many companies just began sort of retracting and contracting, and also too, we were on the cusp of going from 2D animation into CG animation. And again, the film I wanted to make, I think it's known by most people in the animation industry by the title of My Peoples. It was also called A Few Good Ghosts. That was one of the working titles. Um, and and it had also a hybrid of 2D and CG characters in it. Just an art form that I experimented with early on and wanted to continue something on a bigger scale. And a lot of that story, the movie Oh Brother, Where Art Thou had just come out, and this sort of awareness of bluegrass and roots music, Americana music, Hollywood finally sort of like, what is this? Because when Oh Brother, Where Art Thou came out, it became the biggest selling movie soundtrack of the whole year. And it's probably among the biggest selling movie soundtracks ever recorded, the music of it. So I attempted to get that film off the ground, but then the studio in Florida closed, and Disney's closed their studio in Australia, television studio. They closed their studio in Japan, and they still closed their studio in Paris. And I had been offered the opportunity perhaps to go to other studios in Southern California. There was some opportunity at Sony at the time. They were looking for directors, and DreamWorks, but I just decided that I was going to stay in Florida and just go sort of independent and go rogue. And when I did that, and I just became an independent contractor, and then I formed my own company, Studio PB&J. And the PB&J, it's like the sandwich, right? My first initial of my name and the first initial of my name of my two sons. So it's Peter, Barry, and Joe. And Joe helps me actually sometimes with some business stuff. He's sort of a marketing guy that helps me do things. And Pete works for an advertising agency up in Lexington, Kentucky. And he gives me a lot of good advice, because he's in that he oversees a creative department for a big ad agency. So I have kids that are sort of, this is my dream that it could be sort of the Pop and Son sort of business someday, but I just became independent and became an independent contractor. And then I was free to work on films like Arthur Christmas with Aardman Studios and in England. And then after that, I worked with BBC Earth and 20th Century Fox on Walking with Dinosaurs, a 3D movie that they were doing. It was more for pretty young kids, and sort of educational about dinosaurs and stuff like that. But worked in Sydney, Australia for a year at Animal Logic Studios, which is one of the premier visual effects creature animation studios in the world. Just amazing talent down there, and to spend a year down there. And those are opportunities that, if I'd stayed at Disney, it might not have gotten. But I've worked on one film that's actually still being animated now as a producer. I'm not sure what the title of it is. The last title was Kong the Beginning, Kong. It wasn't King Kong, it was the Monkey King Kong. And the Monkey King is an old Chinese legend. And over the years, I've been approached by many producers from China because they've called me and they've said, "You're the only American director who's ever told a Chinese story well. So could you help us with our Chinese story?" So I've gone in and done a lot of script consultation on various film projects and various animation projects in China over the past 10 or 15 years also. So but anyway, that's and then also too, for me now, it's like I've worked on everybody else's movies for a long time, and I just want to start creating some of my own content and building some of my own content and I'm doing a lot of writing now, and a lot of writing screenplays and ideas for films and so forth.
And how does like an independent animation, how does that, like, you just produce the movie, and like how easy is it to get distribution? Would it be streaming distribution, or like what is the path for independent animation?
Well, it's changed drastically. I mean, distribution, anybody who's in the film industry, especially independent filmmakers. And it's funny because my first days going to the film festival at Vanderbilt University, the Sinking Creek in Nashville, everybody I met was an independent filmmaker. And it's sort of like, that's what I want to be. I want to be an independent filmmaker. I want to make my own films. Well, nobody told me how expensive making films would be. But you can make films, but getting distribution is near impossible. And now everybody's making films. Like back in the 90s, 1990s, there was a surge of independent filmmakers who sort of hit the big time, making things like Mariachi and these different movies, that even Blair Witch Project and things like this, it just sort of came like low budget things, but really hit. But you have to realize those are sort of like winning the lottery sort of experiences for a lot of those. El Mariachi, like that film was, $200,000 budget, and ended up making millions. So a lot of different independent filmmakers, and then you could get distribution. And nowadays you can still get distribution, but you find distribution on streaming, one of the streaming services. But again, going back to when I was a kid, I was the only kid in high school making movies. Now you go to any high school, there's a lot of movie makers, because we can do it with our phones, and we can do 4K with our phones, and we can put a gimbal on our phones, and we can do Steadicam shots, and we can do anything we want. And the animation tools like the Unreal Engine, which is a CG tool, it's open to the public. It's free. You can use it. Anybody can use it. So there's a plethora. There's just a multitude of filmmakers making films today. So the marketplace is like super saturated and super crowded, and the actual value of a film what a filmmaker can make off of an independent film has gone down and down and down and down. So it's really hard. I think I've been listening for the last couple of years to um, a YouTube caster named Alex Ferrari. I'll give him a little plug because he has indie film Hustle, but he's also written some books. But he talks about how independent filmmakers today, they really have to cultivate their audience, their niche audience, to find the right audience for their film and connect on social media and find the audience. You just can't get wide distribution. And independent animation, where your question started, budgets for those will range from the lowest budgets, around $20 million for a film to maybe upwards of $80 million nowadays. And it's like, if you're getting that kind of investment in that kind of film, that's a very risky place to be in right now, because you really can't compete with Disney and you can't compete with Pixar or Illumination. You don't have the marketing strength and you don't have the audience awareness. But what the audience are aware of is they're just completely immersed in very high quality imagery and animation on the screen. And if anything even smells slightly cheap, they just turn away from it. Oh, I can see better animation than this for free on Disney Plus. Why would I want to watch this independent film over on some other streaming platform? Or why would I want to pay $10 when I can get a month-long subscription, for $11? So it's become very, very difficult, I think, for independent filmmakers to eke out a living. But that's just the nature of the business right now, ever changing daily, the way things are changing. And I've never fancied myself as a business person. It's show business, but I'm sort of in the show part. I'm the creating the content and not selling the content really has been my bag. Usually somebody else has the job of selling it.
Yeah. So what's on the horizon for you? Like, can you tell us what you're working on? Any fun stories? Anything exciting that you can like give us a little sneak peek into?
Well, yeah, a little bit. I was writing as I mentioned, I wanted to start writing some of my own stories, and I've been doing that for the last few years. And I've always been very partial to ghost stories. And my first movie I made when I was 10 was Dickens' Christmas Carol, including Marley's ghost. There's 4 ghosts in that story. The film that I didn't get to make at Disney, but I wanted to make, one of the working titles, as I mentioned, was A Few Good Ghosts. So I've always been sort of intrigued by ghost stories, and part of that came up from growing up where I did in Tennessee, and my mom's side of the family and sort of country folk, back there, and they had all these great ghost stories and interesting sort of paranormal tales and supernatural tales. And so I began writing. I thought, I'm going to write a very contained story, a ghost story, takes place sort of like a horror movie all in one house. And I called it The Happy Place, which is sort of named after the house. But I just wrote it as a short story originally. And then the pandemic, came along, and by that time, I think I'd written it as a full-length screenplay. And so I said, what can I do? How can I get this thing out there and make it happen? So I rewrote it as an audio drama, as an audio play. And over the last 2 years, we've been recording it in Nashville with some local actors there, nobody famous. And we've got it all recorded. It's going to the final mix next week. So I'm not sure what platform it's going to be on, maybe Audible. I know I'll probably put a chapter at a time on my YouTube channel, which is Studio PB&J, which I don't really post there a lot, but starting with this audio play, I'll start doing regular posts. And we've got some behind the scenes footage that we've posted up there already. And one clip from the audio play, I think, is up there now. And then also I said, well, I'll just also publish as a book. So what I have here in my hand, which nobody can see, but you can see it, I got the first proof copy of the book version of The Happy Place.
Oh, wow.
And so this just went live on Amazon today.
The Happy Place by Barry Cook. And now is it what kind of ghost story is it? Is it like a family friendly, or like more like what level ghost story can you compare it to? Like The Watcher kind of thing, or
No, this is my kind of ghost story. I don't know if it's like anything else.
But is it like
It's
family, more family, like friendly, or is it more
no,
Halloweenish?
it's got some it's got some adult themes in it, murder and stuff like that. But it's the story of a young musician, and the story is set in 1969. And he's a young musician. He's hitchhiking from uh, from Mississippi on his way to Woodstock, the music festival in New York. And when he gets to Nashville, he meets someone in near Nashville, a small town, and and he's murdered, and he gets stuck in his killer's house as a ghost. So
Oh.
that's the basic story. So it's set in 1969.
Ooh.
It's called The Happy Place, a ghost story from the summer of 1969. And a lot of it's based on some childhood memories. A lot of it's based on the old farmhouse that my parents used to live in, is sort of the setting for the story, the main setting for the story. And it's just a novella. It's 110 pages or something, just a small book, little 5x8 paperback. And so yeah, it went live today. I think there's like a little 72-hour turnaround, but by Halloween it should be available for purchase on Amazon. You should be able to find it.
I gotta put this on Ghostly Stories and Strange Things, so maybe, that was, like, one of my new podcasts because I think everyone's, like, obsessed with ghosts, like this Watcher that's out, like, with the
Yeah,
mysterious, letters and stuff, and we just can't get enough of this, on any house that someone lived in and had to move out because of the craziness that went inside that's
right.
unexplained, supposedly. Yeah, people love that, and they love making TV shows around that, so congratulations, because books are really hard to do, and that looks like a beautiful book. You did that self-published on Amazon, or
Yeah, this is self-published on Amazon, and
it looks
the
professional, like a professional publisher, like a big publisher did it.
well, I did the cover illustration,
There you go.
and they do a good job. This is my proof copy. It's still marked up with a few changes I want to make. The nice thing about self-publishing something like this is that it's print on demand. So they don't print like 1,000 copies and you're stuck with them in your garage if you can't sell them. If somebody orders one, they print one, they send it to them right overnight. That's the way Amazon. They got a lot of their facilities have printing facilities inside, and so even if I wanted to modify some of the content or the cover in any way, or put new blurbs on the back of the cover, or whatever I want to do, you can change content anytime. And next time somebody orders it, it'll be an updated copy. If you change more than 20% of the book, then you have to do a second edition or something like that. But I think I'll still be, I'm just always looking for little tweaks and looking for little, minor little things that I think, maybe that word could be a little better. So it might evolve even a little more over the next few weeks. But we're pretty much done with the book, and it's going to be out there. And then it's really just spending maybe the next year and trying to drive traffic toward that, and trying to find people who are interested. And like you said, you have a podcast that features ghost stories and paranormal. Finding those people who are interested in that stuff and pointing them in the direction they could get it. So yeah, that could be great. And the audio drama is really fun, and it's basically like a movie with no picture. I mean, it's a full soundtrack, music, sort of 60s style Hendrix guitar stuff in there, and all sorts of great stuff. And it's got a lot of music. It's got two songs in it, one original song that's in there, and one old blues song that's in there. And so it's really full of music and sound effects, and it just, you can just watch it and
Oh, do we get
imagine
a
the
sneak
story.
peek? Do we get to listen to any of that music? Can you
I
play
don't have
some?
any of it right at hand, but
Oh man, we would have loved to hear some, like a little sneak
yeah,
peek.
but yeah, it's fun because it's sort of, I just tried to get that vibe of 1969, and that was a very interesting year. If as probably a lot of your listeners wouldn't recall, but 69 is the year first year of the first moon landing. And it was also the year of the Manson murders, where Charles Manson murdered Sharon Tate and the people in that household. So it was a very strange year. It was also the August. It all happened in July and August of '69, and the Woodstock Music Festival was also in August of that year. So it was an amazing point in the sort of cultural history of America. And I grew up. I was only 10 years old in 1969, but just everything resonated with me, and I've always wanted to write about it a bit. So it's a fictional story that I've written, but it's just everything I knew and know about that period of time, to sort of pack it into the story and make it feel really authentic to the time that it's set in.
Yeah, and are you executive producing a couple things too? Can you share anything with some of these things that you're coming up that you're executive producing? It sounds interesting. Like,
well, the one I mentioned was the Kong the Beginning.
yeah.
It's being animated. It's being animated at a studio called Monk in Bangkok, Thailand. I was down there summer before last to get those guys kicked off. I don't think they're quite finished with the film yet. I really don't have any real connection with the film anymore. I was in the early days of development and scripting and getting the movie up on its feet, so to speak. But now it's been handed over for production, and so I'm not really involved in it. Hopefully, it will come out in the near future. I think it's going to be a big release in China because it is a Chinese production.
Oh,
so I think it'll be a big. I'm an executive producer of that film. But other than that, just producing things like this audio podcast. I am working with another film that I can't mention right now. It'll be a big release feature film, and I wrote the screenplay for it, and I'm continuing on as story and script consultant through the pre-production process. So we're in the middle of pre-production right now on that project. I can't really say much about it yet, but that's what's keeping me really busy right now. At least half my week I spend on that, working on that film.
I see like the Cleo the Pharaoh and Mean Margaret. Are you allowed to share anything with those, or they're still early?
Mean Margaret is a film that I developed more than 10 years ago. There was a startup studio in Burbank called IDT, and it was later sold to Stars. And we had developed this film, Mean Margaret, which was based on a children's book by Tor Seidler. Great children's book, and a very popular children's book. And I developed basically the animated feature film version of that. Chris Henderson is now the producer of it, and he's picked it up from Stars. And I can't say much about that film either, but that's been out there sort of in the press. But I think we're this close to starting a pre-production track on it, but I can't say that, it's like everything. You can't count your chickens in Hollywood. You just can't. And what was the other one you had mentioned?
The Pharaoh.
Oh, Cleo, Last Pharaoh. Yeah, a good friend of mine, Laurie Ashburn, that I worked with at Disney. She has a company called LA Story, which sounds like Los Angeles Story, but it's Laurie Ashburn Story, LA Story. She lives in Los Angeles now, but she had written a screenplay about Cleopatra, the Last Pharaoh, Cleopatra, and it's a family type film set in Egypt and set in Alexandria, Egypt. And I've worked with her over the past couple of years, just helping perfect the screenplay and helping her get the story as good as it can be. I think there are some distributors and some people interested in making it happen, but right now it's sort of on a side burner for me, at least. I think Laurie's pressing on with it. Her company, LA Story, she does a lot of script consulting herself, and she does a lot of I guess what you would call script coverage for screenwriters. So that's, taking a script and then doing coverage, and she may do coverage for other studios as well. So she's she does a lot of script coverage, and she's creating a lot of her own original content and doing some things now. So it's fun to be involved with some folks that I worked, shoulder to shoulder with while I was at Disney. But now we're all sort of out and independent and trying to find our way and trying to find new ways to do things, and getting sort of hooked back up with people that I've worked with in the past has been really fun. And so that's a really fun story, and I hope that we can get it made.
Yeah. Do you want to share anything, like any fun stories on Little Mermaid or Aladdin, real quickly that you any
Yeah, well,
fun
I was
memories?
just, after Tron, I started working in the visual effects department and effects animation department for Disney feature animation, and and then visual effects for hand drawn animation with things like lightning, waves, and Little Mermaid bubbles. I tell everybody I did not draw every bubble in the Little Mermaid, or I did not animate every bubble in the Little Mermaid. I only animated about 2 billion of them. So for basically a year, I'm just doing bubbles behind characters, stuff like that. And Beauty Aladdin was the last feature I worked on as an effects animator and supervisor of an effects department here in Florida, of the effects department in Florida. But then I started directing short films after that. So, but yeah, just anything that's not a character that needs to move or needs to be on the screen. Any visual effect: rain, sleet, snow, water, waves, shadows, explosions, you name it, we drew it and animated.
That's amazing. So you write, you do special effects, you direct, you produce, you executive produce. You have so many, and you have a book out called The Happy Place, which is more of a ghost story. And so just so many great things. So do you have social media where they can keep up with you, or a website where your fans can see what you're up to?
Well, because we were doing this book and self-publishing this book and doing this audio play of The Happy Place, we have established Studio PB and it's studiopbj.com. There's not really a lot of content up there right now, but that's where we're going to be, letting folks know what's happening. We do have a YouTube channel, studiopbj.com, or Studio PB&J on YouTube. And then yeah, so I don't do, but really I don't. That's it's a full-time job, social media,
And if you're
and
writing and creating, like, yeah, writing and creating, and if you're writing stories, people don't understand, like, how long it can take to write a story. It takes a long time, and to come up with a good story. And, my kids' podcast, Enchanting book reading, like, I'm, like, putting these stories out as fast as I can, and I think like you said, when you write, writing is writing, and I think it's made me a faster writer and a better writer when, the kids are listening, because it's ranked top
Well, one
1%.
more thing. Speaking of
Yeah.
kids, I do have the next project, the next book
Yeah.
project I have. I've already started on it. I've been working on it actually for a couple of years when I can. It's called The Gumdrop Ghost. It's also a ghost story, but it's for
Oh.
kids. It's just a little picture book, but I'm illustrating it. I wrote it and I'm illustrating it. So my goal is to have that available by next Halloween. So my goal right now is just something I want to do going into my retirement years. I want to do a little book every year. I've got a graphic novel based on a screenplay that I wrote called The Cat and the Fiddle, and that would be more of a family-oriented story probably, and that's a much bigger project, but I've been working on that for several years. So I've got this sort of track that I'm trying to get on to release some sort of publication, a book every year, once a year. So and so that's sort of my goal. I don't know how it'll all turn out. A lot of times you get distracted by other film projects and somebody hires you to do something and you get tied up and you don't have enough time for your own stuff. But I'm trying to focus as much attention as I can on my own stuff right now, just because I've always wanted to do it. And I know that, eventually there'll come a time when I can't do it. So it's like I want to try to do stuff now while I'm still capable and still interested and still creative.
Yeah, well, it's been amazing having you on the show. Thank you so much. And everyone, take a second to hit the download the podcast. If you'd like to support us, buy me coffee, Sneakies, or PayPal anonymous content, and check out our YouTube channel, Story Pals, and our other podcasts. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.